Luis, we just do roll call, so if you introduce yourself.
Sure. Luis Torres, San Leandro Police Captain.
Dion Sales, Deputy City Clerk.
Richard P. Arota, City Attorney.
Jeff Kay, Assistant City Manager.
Colleen Hunter, Mayor.
Lee Thomas, Council Member, District 3.
Okay, thank you. Any announcements? Besides, one of my colleagues, Pete Blue, is out of the country today, so he won't be attending. Discussion items.
Yes.
Mayor, I'll provide just a little bit of context and turn it over to Rich. This is, as I'm sure you recall, an item that was brought up at a past council meeting a couple of months ago and referred to the rules committee for additional discussion. We didn't know at the time of scheduling this, the council member Blue, who had requested it, would be out of the country. But perhaps the timing actually works okay if we treat this as an introduction. He obviously has some background with this, but he's worked in the police department over many years. It might give us a chance just to talk about a little bit about what we have in place right now as far as policy, what some of the legal restrictions are about that policy, and the city attorney can speak to both of those, and take questions from both of you, just as a way of setting the foundation, understanding what our current situation is, what might be some place we want to move to in the future, and that would give us enough direction to start formulating a presentation for the next meeting. Councilmember Blue is back.
Thank you, Jeff. Currently, the city's we provided a memo to the Rules Committee. Did you both receive it? Okay. To summarize, the city's existing, what it's called, intimidating solicitation ordinance is in the municipal code at section 4-1-500. There's a definition of what intimidating behavior, which is defined, how it's defined in a public place, and locations where it's prohibited, specifically ATMs and banks within 15 feet of any entrance or exit of any bank, savings and loan association, credit union, or check cashing business during business hours, or within 15 feet of an ATM 24 hours a day. To motor vehicles, approaching a motor vehicle to solicit, parking lots, soliciting within a public parking lot or structure, and on public transportation. What we're currently analyzing, city council members, is changes that have occurred within the last 2.5 to 3 years, specifically with a Supreme Court case we call the Town of Gilbert case, which redefined what content-based and content-neutral means in the context of free speech. And to summarize, the content-based restrictions that were defined by the court were strengthened. And when I say strengthened, I meant that they expanded what content-based means in the context of invalid regulations. And when you think about content-based regulations, they are presumptively invalid. Think about it, you can't regulate content, free speech. That's what we're talking about. And soliciting itself being free speech, or a free speech protected activity. If you're going to regulate something that's content-based, including soliciting for anything, it's subject to what's called strict scrutiny and review by the Supreme Court. That means that the ordinance or the regulation that the city passes has to be justified by a compelling governmental interest. So there has to be a compelling governmental interest. Public safety is one of those compelling governmental interests. Narrowly tailored to achieve that goal or interest. So you have to narrowly tailor the ordinance, and that it's the least restrictive means of achieving that interest. You can imagine then that strict scrutiny is a high bar to meet in protecting a regulation that we may propound or that you may approve. So recent Supreme Court case law, including the Town of Gilbert, but we're now looking at the specific circuit courts throughout the country. And the Ninth Circuit has not ruled on anything related to new regulations after the Town of Gilbert, but there is a case in California, in the Northern District, from the city of Eureka, that is also testing this. But right now that case is in the district court. So it's not at the appellate court level yet, and we'll see what happens. We're waiting for it to occur and what the decision will be at the district court. But basically all that case law, including individual circuit cases, which are not binding on the Ninth Circuit, but would be persuasive to judges in the Ninth Circuit, including the judge that would be covering this case in Eureka, but it's actually in San Francisco, Northern District. They have impacted whether any restriction by cities, even current ones or regulations, are content-based or content-neutral. And so other jurisdictions, we've provided examples City of Union City, City of Sacramento, County of Sacramento have changed their ordinances in response to Town of Gilbert. They provided the examples. Right now, the following provisions that are not part of the existing ordinance include transit stops. So we know that we have bus stops, we have the BART station, of course, BART stations, and now we'll have the BRT stops as well, that will be included in that. Gasoline stations and fuel pumps are not currently in our ordinance. Medians and intersections are not currently in our ordinance, or outdoor dining areas are not currently in our ordinance. What we would propose to the City Council Rules Committee right now is to, again, in light of the recent case decisions regarding what's permissible as an ordinance and a regulation that would pass strict scrutiny review by any court, not just the Supreme Court, on intimidating solicitation, panhandling, et cetera, is to analyze current amendments that are being made in the other cities' ordinances, receive direction from the City Council Rules Committee as to what the committee has in mind, whether to expand or contract the ordinance, we're not sure, one time, and then we'd have to come back after we've analyzed what the committee envisions for this ordinance. We would say, though, that in light of the Eureka case, we'd like to, this may take maybe, we don't know when the Eureka case will be decided. Could be in the next 90 days. So if we don't come back without having some direction from the Eureka case would be helpful. But if we wanted to move forward, another option would be obviously contacting the local ACLU, the Northern California, and working with them. Councilmember Blue and I had a discussion about this, and he suggested that when he was a police lieutenant, he worked with the ACLU on particular ordinances. Do you remember that, Captain Torres?
I
That he did?
don't.
He did mention that he worked with them on ordinances that he had been, and that makes proactive sense in a way, that they would be the ones to challenge some type of ordinance, intimidating solicitation ordinance, if the council expanded it.
So standing on the corner of, say, Costco, that little strip there, with a sign that says, I need money for food, that is free speech?
It is.
Even though you're, trying to get an action from somebody to, okay.
That's correct. Now, if we, again, find a justified compelling governmental interest, let's use that as an example. If that particular intersection, Costco, Davis Street, a lot of traffic, or there have been numerous accidents, or a number of accidents, maybe not numerous, but we can show evidence of accidents, impacts on traffic, and another government interest related to safety. So traffic and safety issues. There's your compelling governmental interest for passing the regulation. We would need to analyze whether we had such information. I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, Luis, do you ever get complaints from that, or?
Yes, we get a lot of complaints there, and we make contact with the individuals there as far as issuing citations. I don't have those numbers with me, but I would say they're very few. Most times, individuals that we make contact with will heed our recommendations for them to get off. But as the city attorney said, is if they begin to create a traffic problem out there where cars are stopping, then for us it's that safety piece of it is why we'll step in at that point.
No, I mean, I think working with the ACLU is, I'd support that. And just get some direction from them. For me, people are trying to make some money and feed themselves, so I don't quite have an issue with folks standing in the medium. That they're not causing harm to anyone else and not being aggressive. But it's just my.
Yeah, I didn't know if you had a lot on that or not. The thing that troubles me, and I know Pete brought it up, but the part that I can see coming is when we were working on the BRT, they're going to have their stations, and there will be cash because you're supposed to have your ticket already when you board the bus. And so I don't know if that's considered an ATM machine because there's cash involved, or how that will work. But that scares me because I think that was one of my concerns, making sure these are well lit and cameras and so forth, and then a button for help if you needed it right at the station. But that's something I'm concerned with. But yeah, as far as the guy at Costco, as long as I've never been particularly bothered. One guy had a dog and the dog ran out and that bothered me, but, I was afraid he'd get hit. But I do know going into, when you're shopping, and especially in the evening, and all of a sudden somebody's behind you in the parking lot when you're loading your groceries into your car, it's quite discerning, and it scares you. Whether they're, aggressive or not, it's not something that, because they can come into your space. I think that really the best call would be to go back and, we could put a lot of things in place, but then have them dismantled, and so why do all that work before
Right.
we get where we're gonna go with that?
So Will, sounds like we want to just take a wait and see, but is there an interest in, I guess at this time, looking at expansion such as transit stops, gasoline stations, fuel pumps, medians, intersections?
Well, I definitely, the transit stop at the BRT, yes. To me, that's gonna be a pretty big place, to do it. I don't, fuel stations, I have no clue whether that's what do you see, what do you get complaints?
So we do get complaints of individuals that are at the gas stations, whether it's, asking for money specifically or attempting to. We have had these very often, but attempting to wash somebody's windows. They're at the, and it happened, it was more prevalent, excuse me, here at San Leandro Boulevard and Davis Street, where we got a majority of the complaints of individuals trying to wash somebody's windows. But there are complaints when people are pumping gas.
Okay.
I'd support this expansion with some kind of feet limit.
Yeah, the outdoor dining area to me is not so much people panhandling, but it's these people that are stealing computers and so forth. And if you have this kind of rule, then you have the option to say there's no reason they should be in this space, whether they're panhandling or not, and then perhaps they're not going to steal your computer as fast or something like that. I don't know because I've not had it happen to me and stuff like that, but if that would help strengthen that, I would, for our police, giving them a tool to kind of watch that area, because I know that it's the outdoor at the village that's doing it, getting like the Pete's coffee and so forth, so. Do you have enough?
I think we do. And we will reach out to the ACLU. Is there interest in waiting to come back to the committee after the Eureka case?
I'd say yes.
Okay. I have a derelict in my duties. A note from Pete.
Uh-huh.
I just remembered it. Thank you for.
Oh,
Oh, okay. I just had to go through my bags. Anyway, it says, to the rules community and the public, I'm currently out of the country on vacation, but request this letter be included as part of the record regarding the updating of our intimidating solicitation ordinance. I believe our ordinance would benefit from an update to include best practices from other jurisdictions. I also think that we should provide direction to staff to comply with legal parameters that have already been set or reviewed. I do feel strongly that medians or intersections and outdoor dining areas should be included. I also request that staff consider whether or not we should include legally conforming handicap parking spaces and handicap ramps in our ordinance. Persons relying on these spaces and conveyances represent a protected class who are vulnerable and even more likely to be intimidated by someone soliciting from them than the general public. Typically, constituents using handicapped parking spaces and ramps are older and less able to maneuver away from or around the intimidating solicitors. I also believe it may be worth asking staff to contact the ACLU to ascertain if they have any current or emerging concerns surrounding solicitations versus free speech. I offer this letter as one member of the Rules Committee and appreciate my thoughts be considered in my physical absence. And I think we've pretty much complied with all of his wants and needs in there, so.
I think we have enough direction.
Okay, so that's that. And then now it's time for public comments. We have a 3-minute.
Oh, okay. I thought we had talked about it before.
Well, we did, but
Yeah, I'm
if
just
you're
concerned about everything you guys talked about, and then also the cleanup that goes along with it. When I saw the rules committee, I was like, they're just making rules for the panhandlers. They're not doing something about it. I kind of didn't, I don't know how all this stuff works, so that's why I'm here today, just to kind of figure out what goes on because I've seen, when I started coming here, there was one homeless person in San Leandro. And he lived underneath the Washington Street overpass. And he used to get, you know, he'd move in under there, he'd be there for 2 or 3 days, and the police would run him out. Now it's like, they don't even care, they're under all the overpasses and everywhere. You know what I mean? I've just seen it get worse over the years, not better, and it concerns me because, like I said, I live here and I don't plan on going anywhere. My kids, I'm having problems with the school already. You know, I'm trying to deal with that, so I figured I might as well. I was at the meeting Saturday. You guys were talking about what needs to be taken care of. That's why I brought that up. You know, I just wanted my voice heard because I wasn't getting anywhere where I was going. So I appreciate everyone's time. Like I said, I'm a resident here for almost 20 years. I think I'll probably be here at least another 20 years or so. I'm on board with what needs to happen, and I want to do what I can to make things happen to clean up the city. You know, it's a great city, it has a great history, which I've learned a lot following my daughters through the school. You know, elementary school, going on field trips. I didn't realize the great history of San Leandro until I started going on these field trips. Going downtown, I forget what's the cultural center by the Peralta House.
Yeah,
And I've
history
been there
museum.
like 3 or 4 times in the past 6 or 7 years. I love it now. You know, I don't get down to this side of San Leandro very much because I'm on the other side, but I just, you know, I want to get the city cleaned up and make it a safe place, and I want people to come. You know, it's a great city. I love it.
Well, thank you for your comments, and I appreciate the fact that you're trying to learn about the city. That's can only be good news for us, so thank you.
Well, and as you can tell, I was like, I wonder how many people go to these meetings. Here it is, me.
Well, we-
Depends on the topic.
Yeah, it depends on the topic, so.
Yeah, and I would imagine that too.
Your name, sir?
Christopher Bammer.
Thank you.
Do you have any comments? Okay, no comments, so this is a great, fast meeting, so we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks.